Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, greenhome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com, get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, our newest sponsor is pscoco.com. Phoebe Sod of pscoco.com is an independent curator with the Cocoa Exchange. It's a registered trademark of Mars Incorporated. The Cocoa Exchange is formerly known as Dove Chocolate Discoveries. Everybody remembers Dove chocolate, some of the best chocolate out there. They're the makers of the finest silky smooth chocolate because the products start with the finest cocoa beans, which are tested for quality and flavor by expert Mars technicians. The Cocoa Exchange offers not just premium chocolates, but everything from sauces, spices to brownie and cake mixes, and even coffee and martini mixes. Now, if you wish to treat yourself or someone you love to a sweet and tasty gift, then the Cocoa Exchange is the brand for you. That's Phoebe Sod's Cocoa site, pscoco.com. That's pscocoa.com. You can place an order right now. You can have it in your mailbox by Monday morning. Also, too, if you want to get into the cocoa business, go to pscocoa.com and you can become a chocolatier, just like Phoebe Sod. And if you bring a friend, you can be 3 chocolatiers at the Cocoa Exchange. Okay, let's see here. Oh, boy. Okay. I knew about this case a while back. It's the Mitrice Richardson, this young woman in Malibu, and I heard her on the news about 5-7 years ago. She was in some restaurant. She couldn't pay the bill. Next thing you know, the cops come. She's thrown in jail. They kick her out of jail in the middle of the night. She's wandering around the hills of Malibu Canyon. If you've ever been up there in the middle of the night, it's not a fun place to be. They have bobcats and all kinds of mountain lions up there as well. And she's missing for a period of time. And then I kind of lost track of the case. I didn't really. They discovered the remains of her body, but the whole from beginning to end, there is nothing but mystery and. Something's fishy here from start to finish in this case. There's a new documentary that came out called Lost Compassion. And one of the participants in this is Dr. Rhonda L. Hampton, who is our guest today. Now, you can find Dr. Rhonda L. Hampton at her website, reachformentalhealth.com. And also, too, if you want to check out a couple of websites on this case to get familiar with it, on Facebook, there's a Lost Compassion Facebook page and also Find Mitrice Richardson Facebook page. Dr. Hampton, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Tell us about yourself. Who is Dr. Hampton, Rhonda L. Hampton?
Well, okay. I'm a clinical psychologist here in Southern California, and actually, born and raised in Southern California. Went to school locally. Graduated from Cal State Fullerton with my bachelor's degree in psychology. I went on to the University of Laverne, where I got my master's degree in counseling psychology, and I got my doctorate degree in clinical psychology at the California School of Professional Psychology. And in school, I had a special interest in working with those with chronic mental illness, so that would be severe depression, schizophrenia, more chronic conditions. So, I set about to start a career in working with those folks with more chronic mental illnesses. I have a private practice that was, just kind of starting out, but doing okay. I am married, and at the time that Mitrice went missing, I had a 6-year-old daughter, and my plan was that I was hiring, at that time I was hiring a few psychologists to come on board so that I could kind of step down a little bit and spend my daughter's school year kind of hanging out with her. And I'm a Girl Scout leader, so I'm big into Girl Scouting and that kind of thing. So, but about the first day that my daughter started first grade, my office manager called me and said, there's this young woman and she wants to do an internship, and there were some problems with her previous internship, so that could she come to the office? And I had no interest in overseeing an intern because I was trying to downsize things a little bit for myself personally and spend more time with my husband and my daughter. But my office manager has a soft spot in her heart. So I said, okay, well, let her come in, but I'm just going to give her the basics, and that's it. So in walks Mitrice. I was late because first day of school, dropped my daughter off at school, run into the office, just enough time to said, hi, and I have my first client for the day, and I just told her, I'll have to talk to you sometime later, figure out how to use the phones, and I'll get back to you. So a couple of hours later, I actually meet her, and she was the most just adorable intern that I've ever worked with. So very, very personable, very much a self-starter, because I didn't have to give her any instructions on how to do anything. And we just had a connection right away. So I saw very quickly that she was talented, that she herself would definitely make a great psychologist. And so my plan of just kind of getting her in and getting her out was gone from the moment that I actually met her. So we spent a great deal of time together talking about psychology, talking about her future, talking about clients and methodologies. And, she was so inquisitive. And so she spent about a year with me. And then afterwards, we continued, having, a friendship, a mentorship, however you want to call it. And she was right before she went missing, we were getting ready to go to lunch and get her prepared to apply for graduate school. And that's the last time that I would have seen her.
So how old was she when you met her?
Mitrice was 20. I think she was 23 when I met her.
Okay.
No. Mitrice had just turned 22 when I met her. So it was her very last year of college.
Okay. And where was she going to school?
So Mitrice was going to Cal State Fullerton, which is where I had graduated. So we had lots in common in that regard. So in their last year of school in the psychology program, they have to complete an internship at some type of facility. So that's how she came to my office.
Now, when she was working for you in your office there, were there ever any indications of any kind of mental illness or kind of instability or anything?
There were a couple of times that Mitrice, something about her behavior was a little strange, but not in the way that, maybe not in the way that the common person would think was strange. So, it was enough that I talked to her and I said to her, I'm concerned about your mood and that you seem a little bit up and down sometimes. And also sometimes she came in disheveled, not tremendously so. So these things are so subtle, but I noticed them. And I actually told her I thought she should go to the school counseling center and get evaluated, which she did. And she came back, and I think she may have went twice. And she came back and she was fine and she was clear. And her and I did talk about the possibility of, if she was having like a bipolar disorder or something that was going on. But we talked about it very lightly. And she was open to, if that was a problem, she certainly would want to get something done about that. But that's kind of how it works with bipolar. You could be fine for months and months and months, and then, something, down the road, you're not fine. And anyways, what I was looking at with her was very subtle. So even myself, if she would have came into my office as my client, I may have thought, oh, she's just suffering, the stresses of the end of this, the graduating from college and looking at graduate school. So it also kind of looked like that. So even when I was referring her, I wasn't sure about what was going on, but I just wanted to make sure.
And it is kind of common. There's something about your last year of college, or the kids who go away to college, they can have that big breakdown at that period of time in their life. Am I right about that?
So what happens is that for young men, we'll say somewhere in the late teens, so somewhere between 17 and 19, if there is going to be a serious mental illness, about 17 and 19 is when you see it in young men. For women, somewhere around 22 to 24, which is when you might see that kind of behavior if there's going to be a serious condition. So we kind of loosely say with young men, it's when they start college, and with young women, it's towards the end of college that you might start seeing those symptoms. And again, they're very subtle, so it's not like anybody would have necessarily noticed it until the person has, their first major break.
Because we all have those friends, creative people, really, they fill the room with excitement, and they have their ups and downs,
Right.
We all do that. Well, I don't know, all of us, maybe more than once. Okay, now what about any kind of drugs or alcohol, any kind of...
So when I knew Mitrice, and I knew her friends also, she was not the person who would, necessarily go out and get drunk. She might drink socially occasionally. I had not known her to use marijuana. And in fact, when I met her, we had lots of discussions about that. But towards sometime after she graduated, I know that she had some experimentation with marijuana.
And what about drinking, though? Because they did find...
She wasn't a big drinker in any case.
Okay. Now, she was a lesbian.
Yes.
Well, and a lesbian or bisexual?
As far as she ever told me she was a lesbian, I think in her younger days she had some boyfriends, but, as she got older, her interest was in women. Okay. And there was something about her working as a go-go dancer. Do you think that was beneficial or harmful to her? Mitrice was a dancer, just, on the high school dance team and all that. And when she graduated, she wanted to work for, it's a dance studio, Sierra's dance studio. And I think if you know the singer Sierra has a dance studio in the Valley. And Mitrice thought that if she could teach dance, then that would be a way of helping her work her way through grad school and not having to, so like when you're teaching dance, you can teach it at night, you can teach it on the weekends. That way she'd be able to go to school during the day. The problem is, Mitrice was a classical dancer, so she didn't do any hip hop dancing. So she began taking hip hop lessons, and she began working as a go-go dancer just to kind of increase her skill. And then she eventually thought she could get a job at Sierra's dance studio. So, I mean, you say go-go dancer, which is what she did. So, but it was not like she was naked dancing or anything like that. And even if she was, I supported her, but that just happened to be not what she was doing. She was just
Yes, people aren't too familiar. They have it at nightclubs, regular nightclubs. They put these girls in cages and stuff, on stands and platforms, and they dance up there to get the crowd going. And it's called go-go dancing.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, not like back in the 60s when I was growing up, when they had go-go dancers or topless bars, but
right.
Go-go girls. Well, fascinating.
And I don't think it was harmful for her. I mean, I think that it was the way that she was going to be able to break into being a hip hop dance instructor. And shortly after she started doing that, she actually, because in order for her to teach, she had to win this dance competition in hip hop, which she wasn't, that good at. But when she took the classes and when she started doing the go-go dances, she actually did enter one of those hip hop contests and she won. And then that was going to be the way that she was going to break into Sierra's dance studio, which I've spoken to them. She did have an interview with them, and she was having a second interview with them when she went missing. So I do think it's something that would have worked out well for her.
Now, you've been doing a lot of this investigation yourself. When you go around and speak to people, do you record these interviews? Do you take a statement, an affidavit? Do you have them sign something?
No, I wouldn't say that. A lot of information that I have gotten about Mitrice's case have come from officers, honestly, from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Right. And so in order for them to speak to me, it needs to be anonymous, and it's not recorded. And I just do the best I can to remember what I can. And, when I get home, I write down as much as I can remember. But, obviously there's a need to protect the identity of the people who are giving me information that has been very helpful. I
got you. Okay. Now in September 2009, we first hear about the story where she appears at this restaurant named Joffrey's, it's pronounced?
Joffrey's, yes.
Okay. Now, that's where we first hear about the story. She appears at Joffrey's. But what do we know about her? What was she doing before that day? What was the rest of the majority of that day? Where was she? What was she doing? Do we know?
Yeah. So, and I'm not, because I've spoken to different people, I'm not sure about the sequence, the timing of how things happen, but I do know from people what has happened.
Okay.
So there was a point where she went to her job where she worked as an administrative assistant at a freight company. So she went to her job, and her boss describes her as not being efficient, not doing her job, not being focused. Anybody who knows Mitrice knows that something's wrong, because when Mitrice, she arrives to work on time, she sits down, she does her job, and she's very efficient about it. So when at her job, her boss noticed that she was not getting anything done. Her mood seemed a bit elevated. He was very, very concerned about her. At some point, she left her job, and she went to go to some friend's house, and she began watching some type of soap opera, and she was talking about, that the soap opera was calling her to the ocean and all these kind of odd statements to her friends. She also, and I'm not sure if this happened when she left her job or when she left her friend's house, but she eventually ended up on the campus of Cal State Fullerton. And she showed up to a professor that she cared about a lot, and, that she, got a lot of guidance from. And she began talking to this professor about, that she was writing a book, and the content, as the professor described to me, just didn't make any sense. And Mitrice did not seem herself, and her mood seemed elevated. So that professor walked her over to a colleague who was a psychologist. Only when they knocked on the door of the psychologist, Mitrice got wind that something was wrong. So Mitrice said, "I'm got to go," and she left. And so from that point is when she somehow ended up in Malibu. That is the next time that we hear from her.
Right, and you got to imagine that probably would have spurred her flight mechanism, even more manic, fleeing from this intervention. Now,
right.
What about her MySpace page and her Facebook page? I saw some of that in this film, Lost Compassion. Can you describe that?
So Mitrice, and I honestly was not a social media person back then, and thank goodness that Mitrice had every interest in me being more updated on social media. So she actually had created a Facebook page for me.
Okay.
And we were Facebook friends, and I didn't use it very often, but, at least I had it. So when she went missing, I did go to her Facebook page, and I began to look, at least I would say 4 days worth of behaviors that was very odd, where you can tell she wasn't sleeping because she was posting post after post after post. And the comments that she was making on her page were they were just unusual. She was speaking in some unusual code, focused on the number 8, and it's just bizarre statements that she was making. And her friends were trying to get in touch with her, but she was not responding to her friends. And on her most of those comments that were unusual, I saw on her Facebook page. A couple of things on her MySpace page too, but clearly she had been up for 3 or 4 days without sleeping.
And as a professional looking at that, was this a mental breakdown, or could she have been on drugs overnight, like on meth or on ecstasy or something for several days?
Right.
What do you think?
Right. So for me, my immediate thought when I saw those Facebook postings was that this may be a manic episode. Now I'm saying that because it was something that I had thought a year previously.
Right.
Not that a year previously she wasn't making unusual statements. It was just a feeling that I got. And so now when I saw this and that she'd been up for days and days at a time and the comments that she was making, it seemed to me more manic than actually drug related. And also the content, because when people are on drugs, they're not they may be high, but they aren't necessarily delusional in the way that her postings were.
Very true. More likely to be arguing with ex-girlfriends and ex-wives and stuff, right, rather than Marvin Gaye and Michael Jackson and things. Yeah. Okay, so then describe what happened when she gets to this restaurant, Joffrey's, and what led to her arrest.
So from what I told, she arrives at the restaurant and she immediately jumps in the car with the valet. And she starts talking to the valet, being very friendly, and starts going through his CDs and telling him that this was her car. Now, she was actually in his car at this point, but she was saying this is her car and going through her CDs. And he immediately realized something was wrong. So what he wanted to do was kind of like park the rest of the cars and then try to see what kind of help that he could get her. But by the time he finished parking, one of the cars, she had already walked into the restaurant. He followed behind her and attempted to tell the staff, like, I'm concerned about this girl. I think there might be a problem. But they sat her anyways, and they sat her at a table. She sat alone initially. And then at some point, she decides to join this party of about 8 individuals and just began talking to them and talking to them about her future, their future, telling them things like, something along the lines of they're going to see her name in lights one day, that she's going off to Hawaii and they're going to know it, and reading their palms. And so they, while they found her very charming, they thought that something was unusual about her. At some point, the waiter came over and, kind of said, is she bothering you? And they didn't feel like she was really they were bothering her, just that something was wrong with her. The waiter eventually got her to sit back at her other table. She ordered a meal, which was a Kobe steak and some kind of drink. And after she finished her meal, she went back to the table again. And eventually, when that table left and it was time for Mitrice to leave, she did not have the money, or she didn't think she had the money to pay for her meal. And she said, something along the lines with the universe will take care of it. And so then the staff began to be concerned, like, what's going on with this girl's unusual behavior? Is she just trying to leave to not pay her bill? But at the same time, she's acting strange, and they did not want her to get in her car because they, just for fear of her unusual behavior and what might happen to her. And so she was ultimately arrested for failure to pay an innkeeper. And then at some point, they supposedly searched her car, and they found it was like less than 2 ounces of marijuana, which they've yet to, anytime we've asked for proof of that, they've yet to kind of produce that proof, but whatever. So her arrest was for failure to pay an innkeeper and possession of less than 2 ounces of marijuana.
Now, an attempt was made. She called her grandmother from the restaurant. She got a credit card number, but that was unsatisfactory.
So what happened? Yes. So at some point, the wait staff was debating on should they just pitch in money together to pay for her bill. Yeah. And they decided not to because they didn't want her to get in her car. And they really thought she needed to be 5150, that she needed to be in a psychiatric hold somewhere. So they did not pay the bill for her. She did call her grandmother, and the restaurant, at that time, and they still don't take credit card payments over the phone. And they had just implemented that like a month before because they'd lost so much money from people, basically not following through, somehow like canceling the credit card.
Yeah, chargebacks. Yeah, people have faced.
And so, and her grandmother didn't have. They would take her grandmother's photocopy of the grandmother's card if their grandmother would fax it in. But her grandmother at that time was like 90 years old at the time, and she didn't have access to a fax machine. And also, Mitrice did not. When Grandma was talking to her, Mitrice didn't think. She thought everything's fine, Grandma. Everything's going to be fine. Like she had no real awareness of the severity of the situation that she was in. And also, and I went in myself in speaking to the valet, what he says to me was that Mitrice clearly did not understand what was going on, but that the police did. So what he tells me is that one of the comments that one of the arresting officers made to him was that, you know what, I know what's wrong with her. She's a ding. So, and a ding, LASD will use that term ding to refer to someone who has a mental health issue.
And that's Los Angeles Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Now, did she actually have cash or a credit card in her wallet in the car?
So and I'm unclear about that. She did have money in the bank. So the question, I'm unclear of if she had her, and when I say unclear, it's because I've heard that in her wallet was her debit card and, credit card. But since I didn't physically see them, I can only say that this is what I heard, that she did have, she did have the means to pay it. She just didn't realize it. But I do know that she had money in the bank.
Well, the car wound up at a tow yard, and someone ultimately retrieved that card, a family member. They could have, at that point, they could have went through her purse. Did the police go to the tow yard and remove her purse before the car was returned to the parents?
It's possible that the parents actually have that, and I've never physically seen it myself. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, maybe
so what happens when the police arrest her, they go through all of her belongings. They go through all of her belongings, and they do have her place her phone and her purse and whatever, all of her, according to them, they had her place it all in the trunk of her car, and then they had her car towed. Now, their story is that she requested to have her car towed. I don't think she would have been in the position to request that. And the valet, who says he was with her the entire time, never heard her say that. And the valet also told me that they typically don't tow cars for people who are drunk. He said people get drunk at that restaurant and have to leave their car all the time. They don't tow their car. They leave it there and people come and get it in the morning. So they had no idea why her car was towed in the first place.
Yeah, I never heard of anybody asking to have their car towed by the police, and daily fees and stuff, especially you don't know where you're going. That's crazy. Now, but they did find some alcohol in her car, vodka, tequila, and a half a case of beer. Now, does it just mean a half a case of beer that the other half was drunk? Someone drank the other half, or it was just like a half case, like a container of a half case?
I'm not. I believe it was like not drunk, like they were not open.
Gotcha.
So from what I was told by her friend is that it was either the previous weekend or 2 weekends previous, they had gone to Las Vegas to celebrate a friend's birthday. And they, got a hotel room and, got the booze. And that was the booze that was left over from the party. And it was just still in her car.
And were those containers open?
From what I have never seen them. So from what I've heard, they were not open because they had lots of whatever at the party. They had lots of booze at the party. So when they left the hotel, they just put the rest in her car and then they would, come home. So I don't know if they were open or not. I think the police say that they were open.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, and Joffrey's did not want to press charges. They insisted to press charges because they thought that this would get her medical attention.
Yeah. So what I'm told, and I've spoken to the owner at Joffrey's restaurant, Jeff Peterson, about why the decision was made to do what's called a citizen's arrest. So what happened was they were asking the officers if they were going to take her to the hospital, and it became clear that they were not going to take her to the hospital. And so they said, that they were just going to let her go. So they told the restaurant that the only way that we're going to take her in is if you do a citizen's arrest. So he did that with the assumption that they were going to take her to the hospital. Now, that's the story that I hear from the owner of the restaurant. However, I'm in possession of an email from the arresting officer. Okay. And this officer is to his higher up. And when the arresting officer, Armando Luero, when he's asked about why he arrested her, he said that he did so for her own safety, that she was acting, quote unquote, ditzy, and that he was concerned for her, and that's why he arrested her. So in that email, when he's asked about the arrest, never does he mention marijuana, never does he mention failure to pay an innkeeper. He only mentions that he was concerned about her safety.
And what were the actual charges that she was charged with?
The actual charges were failure to pay an innkeeper. Okay. And possession of marijuana. Under
2 ounces, but no weight. And there's no evidence bag of where this marijuana is that we can look at?
No.
This is amazing. Yeah.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, greenhome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Hey, you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Why don't you describe, and then it's called the Lost Hills or the Lost Falls or something. I lost something about this sheriff's department station, right?
Yeah, so the Lost Hill Station would be in an area that is, at that time anyways, like sort of industrial. So there's nothing open at night because there's warehouses around. The closest place that she could get to, when she was released, if she were actually walking, she'd have to walk through just kind of like a business district. So there's no one there at midnight. There's no bus running. So maybe about 1.5 miles, 2 miles down, there is a grocery store, there is a Jack in the Box, and a McDonald's. At that time, all of which closed by 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So those, even though those were there, they were not open. And so because this is an area that people don't travel through, in the evening, there was no reason for those places to be open, and they weren't.
My question, though, is this substation, this Lost Hills Sheriff's Department station, like how many sheriffs were working there? How many holding cells do they have? Is it an active station and people coming and going?
I don't know the exact number of officers that work there, and it's a small, I don't even know how many because I've toured the place and I've only seen like 2 holding cells, and I think there's like a couple cells in the back. It's not a large facility at all. I just don't know the specific details of that. But it's I'm sure it's never crowded. It's up Malibu Canyon. So if you were coming from Pacific Coast Highway up here, you'd have to drive up through the canyon somewhere around 13, 14 miles, and then you would get to the station. But it's not a place that's where it's like downtown LA where there's just people coming and going. It's just not a busy station. On the night, from what I hear from the person who was in jail with Mitrice, on the night that Mitrice was arrested, there were, from what I hear, only herself and 2 other individuals at that jail. However, one of them was leaving pretty much when Mitrice got there. Mitrice was put in the cell with another woman, and that woman became so uncomfortable with Mitrice's unusual behavior that she requested to be moved to a different cell, and that did happen.
Okay, and so you've talked to this other woman who was a cellmate with Mitrice.
I talked to the woman who came in right after Mitrice got released. So she was hearing the conversations from the jailer and the deputies about her disappearance. The person who was in the jail with Mitrice, the reason why I know what happened as far as this woman asking to be removed, is that eventually the parents filed a lawsuit, and I have copies of portions of the deposition, and one of those is this young woman who was in the jail cell with her. So she tells the story about how she asked to be moved. So that's how I know that story.
Interesting. Now, she filed a lawsuit against the sheriff's department?
Mitrice's parents did.
Oh, Mitrice's parents. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe the cellmate did too. I was saying, my God, then what's going on there that night? Now, what about cameras inside this police station? One more question too. You say you don't know how many police officers work out of this station, how many sheriffs work out of this station, but when you gone up there to visit, did you notice how many cop cars are parked around? Do they have a big parking lot a private parking lot for a bunch of cop cars?
They have a big parking lot. Part of that is because the helicopter, is there, and I just don't recall. I mean, I have the roster of everybody who was there, but who works there, but I never counted.
25 cops, 100 cops, 150 cops. What do you think?
Not 100. I wouldn't say that there's 100.
Okay.
I don't know. 50,
right. 3 holding cells, 5 holding cells. We got to picture what's going on there. Okay. Now, Are there cameras inside this where they process the prisoners and stuff?
So we know now that they were. At the time that we were requesting video, they had originally said that there were no cameras anywhere and that we couldn't, that they wouldn't be able to release any footage of Mitrice inside or outside of the jail because they did not have cameras. We pushed and pushed just because that doesn't even make common sense that there wouldn't be cameras. And in fact, at one time when when we were requesting for video, they were saying, like, basically this family is, the family and friends are crazy is basically like, we don't have video. And I just, I had to address the sheriff at the time and say, if you don't have cameras on the outside of your station or on the inside of the station, it would be foolish of you to continue to go on television and let people know that, because that's dangerous. So at some point they realized that we weren't buying the fact that they didn't have video. However, they continue to hold on to the fact that there was no video and that they were not capable of even producing any video because it didn't exist. What happened was that I got a phone call from a person who had visited that station. He was himself in law enforcement, so he was fully aware of the layout of the place. So what he did was he helped me write out a written statement, and he said, look, if you say it in this way, then they're going to have to release it. So, I wrote everything down the way he instructed, and myself, Mitrice's mom, and her aunt got a meeting with the sheriff, and we each had a copy of that statement and kind of agreed that at any point that one of us can read the statement, we're going to read it, and they're going to have to admit that they have the video. And that's exactly what happened. We met with them at some point. I think that her aunt ended up reading the statement, and then the captain of the station was there, and he had to admit that he had the video and that it was in his desk. He had it there the entire time.
Wasn't there something also too about that there was some video inside the holding cell where she was holding a piece of paper at one moment, and then a second later it was crumpled up and on the floor? So there was some editing done to that video?
When we so after they had to admit that they had the video, the next step was getting them to let us view the video. So it took even a couple of more months to even get them to allow us to see the video. So when we did, we were only allowed to see it once. So you see her, entering the jail with the arresting officer. Inside of the jail, you see them, taking off her shoes and, the various things that you need to do. Getting her fingerprints and mugshot. We saw that. And while she was in the jail cell, you do see her and I'm not going to say acting dramatically unusual, but if you know her, you might see, say that some of her behaviors were unusual. But so she would, at a certain point, she'd lay down in a fetal position. She was like swinging on the door handle, kind of like babies do. When babies are standing up on their crib and they walk back from side to side.
Yeah.
She was kind of doing that. And yes, there was a point where we saw her. I guess it would have been her discharge or intake paperwork, however you want to call it. We saw it in her hand, and she was walking around and reading it. And then the next thing we knew, it was gone. We didn't see her with it anymore, and we saw it crumbled up on the floor. But we could not see how it got from her hand to then being crumbled up on the floor. That part was not there.
And this surveillance video, does it have one of those clock timers in the corner that's running? You can watch it run?
Yeah. So fortunately, since there were several of us reading it, we had agreed that we would all be writing down what we saw minute by minute.
Right.
So we kind of our way of transcribing it. So each second when something we noticed, we would write down, this is the time that we saw this.
So you were allowed to view the video, but you don't have a copy.
No. And what happened is when the attorney for the family, when they were going through the lawsuit, he requested to see the video. Right. Now, the video that they released to him, which he didn't see it when we did, but it was great. He said you could not make out a thing. The entire thing was grainy and you couldn't see anything, that's not the video that we saw, because the video that we saw was not, it was grainy, but you could make out everything that was going on in it. So eventually, we don't know if they contaminated the video or what happened, why the video that the attorney eventually saw was so grainy. And shortly after that, the case settled. So, the issue of the video wasn't up for discussion anymore. I mean, the attorney.
Yeah. Now, what about, how many arrests were made in that jail that night?
From what I hear, there were three arrests, Mitrice and two other women.
Okay.
Oh, maybe four, because they claim that some other man was arrested later on that night.
How many of these people have come forward and said and talked to the family and talked to you? Any of them?
So, yeah, nobody has. That's just been the most unusual thing, because I attended several of the depositions, and while people. And I have copies of depositions. And so while people were definitely, when they're being deposed, really speaking very compassionately about Mitrice and what happened to her and expressing concern, nobody has ever reached out. The only one person, and that was the person who was arrested right when Mitrice was leaving. She has, but otherwise, nobody else.
Okay, now Mitrice's mother, who is, I believe, Latrice?
Lettice.
Okay, Mitrice and Lettice. Now, Lettice calls up the jail there.
Yeah.
How does she know that must have been some work itself to find out the phone number for this little outpost, this little Lost Hills, little tiny station there. Do we know how she found out where her daughter was taken?
So her grandmother, so when Mitrice made the phone call to her grandmother, so the grandmother eventually called Lettice and said, Mitrice is at the restaurant and it looks like they're going to arrest her. And so the grandmother had a little bit of information that she was able to provide to Mom. And Mom did call the restaurant also.
And they said, okay, it has to be this little Lost Hills station.
Lost Hills.
And then she finds a number for that place somehow. God only knows. And now it's not like this is a lot of traffic going in. This isn't Rikers Island or anything, okay? There's one guy in the front, at the front desk, who sees everybody coming in, going out. He would know them by sight, by memory, okay? What they were wearing. It's not a mystery. The mother calls
not only that, the individual who answers the phone, he's a doctor of
psychiatry.
He has a doctorate degree. He owns like a hearing aid company. So I guess he just does his sheriff work on the side. So this is a man who has to pay attention to detail by the very nature of his training as a doctor, let alone his training as a law enforcement officer. So for them to say they don't know who's at that jail, there weren't more than 4 people at that jail,
right?
And probably not more than 2 at any given time.
And there's one causing trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this is, and I've heard those recordings of talking to the officer who's answering the phone. He's like, oh, well, I'll call back in a couple hours. We'll look around, look around where? Look over, you stand up and look. It's
right. And then for them to even, insinuate that she jumped on the bus when they know darn well that
no bus.
Buses don't come out in that area. They come in that area, but not at, midnight. I think they stop at like 8 o'clock or something like that in the afternoon.
Right. People should think of Andy Griffith show. There's 2 cells. This is.
Which happens to be one of my favorite shows. But it really is that type of environment. Modern day, but it's definitely that type. I would imagine that any given time there's way more officers at that station than there are people.
Right. People think Malibu's a big city, but Malibu is really a small town. It's a small, a lot of billionaires live there, rich people and stuff, famous people.
Right.
But it's a small
And not
town.
only that, she wasn't, so while the restaurant is in Malibu, when they took her to jail, the jail is actually in Agora Hills.
Okay.
So she's, driven from Malibu up 13 miles up the canyon to get to, the Agora Hills, Calabasas area to be taken to jail.
Yeah, and those hills and those canyons up there, there's coyotes, this is wild area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now the mother was calling to find out, how can I come pick up my kid? Are you going to keep her there overnight? Or should I come in the morning? If not, I'll come now. And next thing we know, they let her out in the middle of the night.
Yeah. So part of mom's concern is that the way that nobody was quite sure what was going on with her. So while they thought she was acting odd, meaning the restaurant thought she was acting odd, they weren't sure. Is this a mental health issue? Is this what's going on? So somehow mom thought, well, if she's drunk, then she'll be, they'll stick them in the drunk tank and she'll be released sometime in the morning, which is that's kind of the assumption that mom was going under at the time. So when and there also are some conversations that were not taped that mom had that we don't have access to, that mom had with the station there. So they had indicated that she was going to be released in the morning, but that release would have been, to go to court. So mom thought she was going to be released in the morning, that she'd go to court. Mom would have bail money to bail her out or whatever needed to happen at court. So
what day of the week was this? What day of the week was this?
So this was on a Thursday. It was
Thursday.
On Thursday.
Okay, so there could be court on Friday. Okay.
Well, the court, meaning it would have been Thursday morning. Okay. It would have been like mom thinking they're probably going to go to court sometime Thursday morning.
Yeah, because even here where I live now, here in Henderson, Nevada, the courts are closed on Friday. In Henderson, there's no court on Friday. So you get busted on a Thursday, you're there till Monday.
So her arrest then, when you look at her arrest, was she was at the restaurant on Wednesday evening.
Okay, gotcha.
So when she's arrested and released, it's 12:30 in the morning on Thursday.
Gotcha.
So when they said the morning, and mom was assuming, okay, if she's drunk, whatever, mom at the time also owned a legal processing service. So she knew people would be, she kind of knew the routine when people got arrested for being drunk. Go to court and whatever. Right. So when mom calls, it's 4:30 in the morning. So she's ready to get into her car at 4:30 in the morning to sit in the parking lot for however long, probably, for a very long time, a few hours anyway. Yeah. But she wanted to beat the traffic out there because mom's probably like an hour away from the station. So even at 4:30 in the morning, she would have missed traffic, probably got there around 5:30, somewhere between 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then she would have just stayed posted in the station until, whatever operating hours were, which would be like, 8 o'clock or so. That was what her assumption.
But instead, they let her out at 12:30 at night.
Yes.
And now Mel Gibson was arrested, too, for drunk driving. He was taken to this exact same jail. And yes, when they let him out at night, they drove him home.
They drove him home, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they didn't drive Mitrice. They didn't drive her anywhere.
Not only did they not drive her anywhere, there are points where they say while she was in jail, she was talking to friends, and the initial statement from the jailer, Sharon Cummins, was that she was talking with her friends and that she was going to go hang out with her friends, sometime after she was released. Subsequently, we learned that the telephone, number one, Mitrice, since she didn't have a credit card, she couldn't make a phone from the jail, inside the jail cell, not to mention the fact that it was broken in the first place. So the phone that they would allow her to use, it only dialed locally.
Oh, really?
So while they have a phone that they'll give to you, she wouldn't have been able to call her grandmother, her mother, or her friends who lived well outside of the zone that phone reached.
So there's really no record of the phone call she made, but the jailer claims she was making arrangements with friends.
Yes, so the jailer claims that she heard her making arrangements with friends. Now, they have never and still refused to release the phone records. That would at least, give the number of the outgoing calls that she supposedly made. So there is no record of any phone calls being placed at that time from that station, from that phone.
Now, that's interesting, but she could have made a local phone call.
She could have made a local phone call, but even if she would have made a local phone call, they would, those phones would be recorded.
Right.
So there would be record of those phone calls there's no phone calls locally or anywhere from that phone at that time, during the time that she was there.
Is it possible she knew somebody there locally, though?
It's possible because Sierra Dance Studio is in the Woodland Hills area, so that's not too far relative. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a 20-minute ride from the station. Also, Mitrice was considering, the reason why I say that about Sierra Dance Studio is that on that day, she had an interview at Sierra Dance Studio on that day that she would have been on that Wednesday that she went missing. Also, Mitrice was considering going to Pepperdine for graduate school. And I know that she had been there to kind of check out the campus. And plus, she's young. I mean, she very well could have known somebody in that area,
Right. Okay. Now, but then again, kids today, they got all their numbers stored in their phones. You know what I mean? They don't remember phone numbers.
Right. So one of the reasons why Mitrice, the only phone number that Mitrice knew by heart was her grandmother's phone number. And that's because her grandmother had that phone number longer than Mitrice was alive. So Mitrice didn't have any other phone number memorized, which honestly caused much argument between Mitrice and I. So we argued about that a lot because once her car got stranded on the freeway and her phone battery was dead, and she was very close to my office, and I was like, well, why didn't you just go into a restaurant and call me? She has nobody's phone number memorized. So.
Yeah, and people, they get locked up and they, you're in there, there's no phone book in there, you don't know anybody's phone number.
Right.
You're stuck. This stuff happens all the time. It's very, very common.
And people have, people have cell phones nowadays.
Right.
So you can't, call information you're not going to get, anybody's, which is why I was telling her, but anyway.
Now there was
you need to memorize at least a couple of phone numbers. So
public service announcement, kids. Yeah, learn some phone numbers now because you're gonna hit the jackpot once sooner or later in your life. Memorize some phone numbers. People you can trust. Maybe you're a good PI, something like that. Okay. Now, what about or a good psychiatrist? Now, what about there is film of her leaving this jail, and as an officer, sheriff who's leaving shortly behind her. What's the story with that?
So one of the things that we had suspected was just knowing Mitrice. It's not likely that Mitrice was just going to walk out in the dark. Even if she was in a compromised mental state, you're still not going to do things that are way that much out of character, things that are frightening for you. Mitrice had a almost pathological fear of the dark. So much so that one day I came to the office very early, maybe it was 7 o'clock. And it was one of those days where it's still very dark, even at 7 o'clock in the morning. And she was supposed to be at the office, but she was too afraid to get out of her car to go, to get into the office, to unlock the office, to go inside because it was too dark. And we're talking, my office door was not even 20 feet from where her car was. So to imagine her walking out into darkness, everybody knew of her fear of the dark. So that didn't make any sense. So we began to think, if she were walking around, would she get into the car with anybody? I don't know if that she would get in the car with anybody, but Mitrice definitely would have gotten in the car with an officer. Mm-hmm. So we just not necessarily accusing, but just like saying, what are the possibilities? And so we began to ask, was there any officer that left after Mitrice? And they said, no. Not only were there no officers that left after Mitrice, there were no officers that were in the station when Mitrice was released. Okay. So when we finally see the video, what happens is the video, when she's released, she's walked out of the back door where the patrol cars are. So the jailer, Sharon Cummins, and her walk out of that back door together, not out of the front of the station. And so when you see, it's pitch black. And so when you see them walk out of the door and the next thing you see is pitch black, you think that that's the end of the video. That's how dark it was. Mm. So at that point, the detectives who were showing us the video and all of the officials who were showing us the video, they kind of turned, like, okay, that's it. Like, it's the end of the video. Well, we started arguing because we were already pissed, saying things like, wait a minute. First of all, you said there was no video at all. Now you're showing us a video. Now you're showing us a video of her walking out at night. So because we were arguing, that's the only reason why the tape was still rolling.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, we thought it was the end of the tape too. So 2 minutes later, all of a sudden we see light come back on. And so we all turn and look at the screen, and there was an officer leaving right out of a different door.
I have two questions for you. Two questions. First of all, now when she's walking out that door, you described her in the jail cell as being in a fetal position. Now, when she's walking out that door, would you describe her as being more on a range or scale, more of being in a fetal type position or more as in a manic kind of a phase, like maybe like skipping out of there?
When I would not say she was in a fetal position, no, not when she was walking out. I think, and I wouldn't say manic. I can't speculate, but maybe confused. Okay. That might be the best way. So not manic, but just kind of like,
So, but I'm talking about, like, because, you know, she was found in a really extremely remote area. So, you know, and she would have to be running through the thickets and trees and over boulders and stuff like that, like in a manic phase, you know, which could happen. You know, that stuff happens. It happens here out at the lake. People, they get dehydrated. They take their clothes off. They run around in a circle thinking they're going to cool off. You find them dead out there, you know, a couple of weeks later. That kind of stuff happens, you know. But,
I certainly, and just because I spent so many years working in a psychiatric hospital, so I'm certainly aware of the capabilities, you know, of when people are manic, the things that they're capable of. So is it possible? In this case, I don't know that it would be possible or probable, and only because the location, when we were eventually taken to the area where Mitrice was, we literally had to go in with a search and rescue team, and we literally had to have equipment to get to where her body was. Now, however, adjacent to where her body was a 21-acre porn ranch.
We're going to get into that. Okay. That's because what is, by the way, too, the location where she was found, too, was the location of a clandestine marijuana field as well, the general area. And who else, you know, you got a grow area. You're lugging in and out hoses and fertilizer and stuff like that. You don't need to have a search and rescue team with you, okay, when you're doing that.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So that's why the way that they took us in, it's not practical. It's not practical or probable that she could have gotten in that way.
So let's touch on base on it, because it's Susie Randall owns a 21-acre ranch there, where she has a huge pornography business, and they do filming up there and stuff like that. And this is right adjacent to where she was found. Now, the most easy access to that location, either for the sheriffs to go looking for this grow operation, or for your family, would be through that ranch. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't get away from this because we kind of skipped ahead, but you can't get away from the fact that everything is just so hinky with this. What about the officer who followed her out that night that we discussed before? He's been identified, right?
Yes.
And he made a statement, something to the effect of, "I wasn't involved in any of that nonsense that was going on there that night."
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean? How do you interpret that? What does that mean?
You know, and so I had reached out to the department and said, well, if Ishmael Rodriguez would make this statement to a reporter about not being a part of that nonsense, could you please define what he meant by that nonsense? And no response to that.
How old is this guy, Ishmael Rodriguez?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the most current picture that I see of him puts him maybe in his early 30s, but you know, I don't know.
Okay. It's time to take a commercial break. All right. We're here with Dr. Rhonda L. Hampton. Okay. Her website is, I got 5 pages of notes here now. Her website is reachformentalhealth.com. We're talking about the case of Mitrice Richardson. There's a documentary just came out called Lost Compassion. You can find it on Vimeo. I'll have a link on in the description of this show. There's a couple of Facebook pages. Lost Compassion Facebook page and Find Mitrice Richardson Facebook page. Fascinating story. There's way more than we're going to be able to cover here, but there's way more that meets the eye with this case. We'll be right back after these messages. OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs, a lot of content there at OppermanReport.com. And it's the memberships that support the Opperman Report and allow us to play these shows for free on Friday nights and Saturday nights on all the stations you hear us on. You can also make a donation at OppermanReport.com. If you want to support the show and become a member, I can give you a discount. I'll give you 13 months for $65 if you email me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.